Good morning. My name is Colin Carmichael. I'm the Executive Director of the Huron Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to this webinar about spotting workplace scams and fraud. For those joining us live or watching the recording later, I hope that this will help you prepare your employees or yourself to be able to spot scams when they pop up, and what to do with them. So, for those who may not be familiar with the Huron Chamber of Commerce, we serve virtually all of Huron County, representing the business and nonprofit communities in the county. And one of the things we do is provide education and resources for the business community. So that's this webinar fits right into that mandate. And the impetus for this webinar was an incident that happened to one of our chamber members just last week. And so what happened there was a brand new employee, summer student, who had just joined the organization 48 hours earlier, got an email from what was purported to be their new boss, and it was very short. It was, "Oh, I need your help with something. Please text me on my cell," and they gave the number. And so the employee, wanting to be a helpful new employee, did as instructed and texted the number. She had no way to know if it was a legitimate number or not. She didn't have her boss's cell phone number. And through a series of text messages, she was instructed to purchase some gift cards. And the context was not unreasonable. We have an important meeting this afternoon, and I want to, give our guests a gift. So can you go, get these gift cards, etc. In this particular case, the scam was interrupted when the actual boss happened to bump into the employee at the store while she was buying the gift cards, and so it was partially completed but not completely. And what would have happened there is the scammer would have asked the employee to send the gift card numbers, and then they would have been cashed out, and the scammer gets the money, basically, is how that works. So when I heard about that happening, when the member called me and explained what had happened, it seemed to me that this time of year in particular, lots of our members and other organizations in the county are bringing on new employees, whether that's summer students or just other seasonal employees or otherwise. And so it seemed like an opportune time to remind employers, employees, everybody really, that these scams are out there, that anyone can be targeted, and to just give some guidance on how to spot the scams and what to do if they do pop up. So we have a couple of guests joining us today. So we have Constable Craig Solden from the Huron County OPP, and we have Marcy Pritting from Ladder HR Solutions. And Ladder's a relatively new member of the chamber, and we're happy to have you in the Huron Chamber network. And so we're pleased for both of you to share your expertise on this topic, and I'll let you both introduce yourselves a little bit more if you choose when you speak. So just in terms of kind of how this will go, I'll turn things over shortly here to Constable Solden. He'll do a bit of a presentation and then do a Q&A, and then we'll turn the virtual microphone over to Marcy, who will then do a presentation, and there'll be time for questions for Marcy after as well. So I think with that, we will get underway, and I will invite Constable Solden to share his expertise with us.
Good morning. Thank you, Colin, for the invite today. Appreciate the involvement in your Chamber of Commerce, and I hope that lots of people end up viewing this video for sure. Thanks for your time, folks, whoever's here today. And I won't be too long. I tend to speak quite a bit, but we're going to try to focus on the certain types of frauds that are encountered by businesses. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I currently am sitting in the media relations and community engagement officer role, which basically means that I am responsible for all the media releases that are sent from the Huron County OPP, anything that's happening that's newsworthy. I'm responsible for sending that message out via social media or media releases to our media partners. And I also conduct presentations on various topics. Sometimes I'm in elementary schools. A lot of times I'm speaking to seniors on frauds and scams, and then various other topics: drug handling, bicycle safety, cyber safety, bullying for kids. There's all kinds of things that I get brought into. And I'm no subject matter expert, that's for sure. I do have quite a bit of experience in Huron County. I was born and raised here, still live here. When I entered into policing at the age of 27, I started at the Wingham detachment with the OPP, and then down to Goderich, down to Exeter, and back up to Goderich. And then we built this new detachment in Clinton a few years ago. So now we all report out of this office, centralized in the county, which is dynamite. We've got a great detachment here. We do see quite a few different types of occurrences, as you can imagine, from the biggest to the smallest. We do have a fair share of frauds that occur, and those frauds are, in my opinion, increasing in the number of frauds and the complexity of those frauds. There are common ones that we tend to see here in our county. Obviously now with the age of cell phones, computers, internet, we're not, immune from these types of frauds because we're accessible to the world also. So everyone that thinks, oh, we're in Huron County, we're safe, and no one will come over here and bother us because we live in a beautiful little community over here, well, they'll still find you on your cell phone and your computer. So we have to make sure that we're obviously somewhat prepared and educated and a little bit more cautious than we used to be, maybe, and a little bit less trusting, even if we say that, which is too bad that we have to operate that way. But we do have to check things ourselves a little bit more thoroughly in order to protect ourselves. And a lot of it comes down to these scammers and these fraudsters are just after your money. And I tell people, this is a big business. It's billions of dollars Canada wide every year. And I'm going to bring you to a page in it, which will show you some numbers that are really mind boggling. The amount of loss by Canadians per year. Just to give you a quick idea of how we track these types of things, the OPP obviously has fraud investigators that specialize in the larger organized fraud investigations. Our headquarters in Aurelia is where most of those people operate. So we've got specialized services for that. Any huge frauds are investigated by teams based out of Aurelia. And we communicate with our partners in the RCMP, Quebec Provincial Police, Toronto Police, whoever needs to be involved. And sometimes they do catch these fraudsters and they charge them and hold them accountable. But more often than not, it's difficult to catch them because they're operating from overseas sometimes, collecting these wire transfers in another country. And like I said, everything can be done over the phone and over the computer, and with e-transfers and Visa prepaid cards, which we'll talk about, Apple iTunes cards, those methods of payment are all utilized as well. So this can all be done remotely. And they're really, really making it a profitable business. So there's a lot of people involved in these frauds sometimes, and it's very difficult to track them down. It takes a lot of resources to figure it out, where they're operating, how they're operating. They use phones that they'll use for a day or two. They use computers that they use different IP addresses. It's very difficult to catch them. But anyway, I want to talk about the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. And if no one's really familiar with that organization, it's a federal organization based in Sudbury, Ontario. We only have one office in Canada, and their purpose is to collect data on frauds and scams. They don't investigate these types of crimes. That's for police agencies to do. But they do collect information and try to make sense of it. And then they push that back out to the police agencies once they've got something. And then we try to work with that and catch the criminals. So the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center is accessible by anybody. It's not just police agencies, but anyone can report fraudulent activity or different types of frauds or whatever they have for an email, for example. They can report that up to the Anti-Fraud Center, and the website is simply antifraudcenter.ca. And I'm going to share a page in a minute, which will show you how easy it is to navigate that site and to find out more information about frauds. And actually, you could educate yourself. When you have time, I would suggest going into their website and really educating yourself about the frauds that you're interested in, because there are thousands of different types of frauds. In Huron County, I would say that we encounter maybe 10 different types of frauds on a regular basis, maybe not even 10. But they're very creative and they're very good at what they do. And they're very convincingly real with these phone calls. The emails look very legit. Colin and I were talking earlier about even checks and money orders and certified checks and cash, and how that can look so good and real when it's fraudulent. So it's very difficult for a layperson to know the difference between what a real certified check looks like and what a fake one looks like. Especially when we talk about younger people or younger employees that don't have a lot of life experience with that type of thing. And they've grown up in a digital age, and then someone shows them a piece of identification, perhaps a driver's license and a certified check, and they think, well, looks good to me, when they have really no training on identifying what a fraud is. So antifraudcenter.ca, there's also a number that you'll have here. It's 1-888-495-8501. And I've got a little flyer here in front of me, but I'm going to bring up a page here and I'll share it with you in a second. And essentially what they do is they collect information. Now, here's the problem with the anti-fraud centers, that they only have what people tell them about. They only have the numbers that are reported. And they believe that only 5 to 10% of all fraud losses are reported. 5 to 10% of all of them are reported. And the reason I think that people aren't reporting it is that they're embarrassed. So if you were tricked and you lose money, you're not excited about that. That doesn't feel good, and you're embarrassed more often than not. And you may not want to tell your family. You may not want to tell your even employer that you made a mistake and you lost money. And it takes a little courage to go to the police and report that. It takes courage to go to your boss and say, I made a mistake, because you're afraid of getting fired. And it also takes courage to call the anti-fraud center and report it and go through the whole story and tell them what happened. It takes time, and it's embarrassing. So a lot of people don't report it. And that's unfortunate, because we're not really getting the accurate data. We're not collecting all the information that we wish we had so that we could catch these criminals. Just to give you a number, I'm going to give you a few numbers. In 2022, I'm going to go back a couple of years just to see the pattern here, but $522 million Canadian is what Canadians reported losing that year. 522 million. That's the reported losses. But remember, I told you that only 5 to 10% is reported. So if that's true, let's say it's 10% of the actual number. 522 million is 10% of the actual number lost by Canadians in 2022. That number went to 533 million the next year in 2023. And again, that's only 10% of the actual number. So each year, that's billions of dollars lost by Canadians. That's just Canadians, not Americans, not Europeans, no other country. That's just Canadian losses reported to the Anti-Fraud Center. It's an incredible number. And that gives you kind of a scope of how big this organized crime network can be. And it's not just one network. It's many, many, many criminal organizations that are doing this, operating around the world. But it's just incredible how much Canadians are losing to these criminals. In 2024, that number went to, sorry, I just have to take a quick peek at another page here. That number went to, I believe it's 654 million. Just going to take a look here. 648 million in 2024. So we went from 522, 533 up to 648 million. And again, that's just probably 10% of the actual number that Canadians lost. Now, in many cases, that money that's lost is from the elderly demographic, you know, the emergency grandparent scam, the romance scam. People think they're in love and they're sending money overseas via wire transfers or e-transfers to someone they think they're in love with. They've never met them. This is a common scam. The emergency grandparent scam is one where your grandson or granddaughter's in jail and you need to put up bond money for them to get out of court. And they post sometimes $30,000-$40,000 thinking they're going to get that money back after the court process is done, and it's just a scammer and that money's gone. And these numbers really add up, obviously. And we've had one lady, just to give you an idea, over by Tilsonburg, over the course of 2 years, she believed she was in a relationship where she was in love, and she sent a $2.2 million Canadian over the course of 2 years to someone that she had never met, that she believed she was in a relationship with. And it was just a scammer, just an organized crime network, and they got all her money. So anyway, I just want to show you kind of how much money Canadians are losing, and it's a constant problem, and we're not immune to it here in Huron County. And this can spill into the business sector as well. And that's where we're going to talk about a little bit of stuff today with the business side of it. And I'll show you on that website, antifraudcenter.ca, how easy it is to find the frauds that are relating to business frauds. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go into the share option, and just give me 1 second to bring this up. And I believe we're going to go right there. Can everyone see that page, that recent scams and frauds? Colin, can you see
I
that?
can't see it, Craig. Sorry.
Yeah, Craig. It does sometimes take a minute, but it doesn't seem to be coming up. Of course, it worked when we tested it before we started,
Yeah,
Craig.
Let me see here.
The way. There it is.
There, okay, you got it now?
Now we got it. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so if you could just follow along here. So I just went to the antifraudcenter.ca and this main page. If you can see now, can you guys see the view on the right here with these totals? Okay.
Yes.
So it talks about as of March 31st, the reported, you know, it keeps stats on how many victims, how much money lost. So to date, there's 160. I'm just going to collapse this for 1 second. Bear with me. You're still able to see that?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I just lost my view. Yeah, reports processed thus far. These are Canadians only. So 12,815 reports, victims 9,092 reported. That's probably 10% of the actual number. And then 165 million thus far just in 3 months. And then last year, as you see here, 648 million lost last year. So there's a trend where it's going up. This isn't decreasing. So it's a real problem, and we really need people to work together here to get this number down. Let me know if you lose this page here, but as we go down, they have scams organized alphabetically. As you can see here, you get into this, and you could search any type of fraud or scam that you're interested in. The one that I want to kind of zoom in here is the scams affecting businesses. But it also talks about reporting frauds, how to protect yourself, what to do if you're a victim of fraud. There's a lot of good information here. So we can't go over it all today. I'm just going to bring you into the business side of it here. Scams affecting businesses. And you can see as I scroll down, can everyone see that okay, text wise?
Yep. Okay.
So there's bomb threats, business exec spoofs and wire fraud, business grants and loans. You know, there were some issues with COVID-19 scams specifically for that time frame. Extortion, you know, if you don't send me this information or money, then I'm going to expose you for whatever reason. You know, I've got a photo of you, or I'm going to embarrass you publicly if you don't send me the money. There's those ones. We get that a lot actually with inappropriate photos. The kids are sharing these photos, and then someone turns around and says, I'm going to share that photo with your whole contact list, including your family, if you don't send me some prepaid Visa cards. So we call that sextortion, but so there's that one. False billing, financial industry, client spoof. There's all kinds of things you can read about. I'm going to kind of come down to this spear phishing down here. And I think some people have heard of call spoofing and phishing. What that is basically these criminal networks will have a very lengthy list of emails and phone numbers that they either will illegally obtain or they'll share amongst themselves to try their scams. How they obtain those emails and phone numbers is they're getting them from different sources. They'll actually have employees infiltrate companies and steal those that data list. And then, for example, someone's someone that has a clean criminal record would apply to a job at Bell Mobility, let's say. And once they get that job, their goal is to go in there and download as many cell phone numbers as they can and steal that information and then bring it back to their organized crime network. And they'll use it for their purposes. And then they'll share that, sell it to another organized crime network. And then those phone numbers just keep getting utilized. That's how you get these texts and phone numbers from these places. That's how they get it. And that's one way they get it. And obviously there's data breaches with computer hackers, and they're hiring some very intelligent people to work for their organized crime networks. But getting into the spear phishing here, I want to talk about what Colin was speaking about, the employee that had the email coming from an employer. And gift cards are one of the things they're going to be asking for. A scammer sends an employee an email that appears to come from the owner, the president, or another high-ranking employee. The email claims the boss is working off-site, needs to help you to help them buy gift cards for whatever the purpose is, employee rewards or birthday gifts. And they might tell you that, let's keep this just between us, so it's a secret. Don't tell anyone about this. It's going to be a surprise. And they'll send them an email from a spoofed email account that appears to come from the known contact. So it's going to be a similar email to your boss's email, but it'll have a slight variation to it. So at a quick glance, it looks legitimate to you. And in some cases, this new employee really doesn't know how things work, and they don't really know if that's your actual email. And obviously they can't get a hold of you because you're busy or you're out of the country or whatever they say. And they're going to ask you to get these prepaid Visa gift cards or Apple iTunes cards and go buy them with your money. So they're going to say you could buy it with your credit card if you want, or if you want to take some cash out of your account, pay for them, and then I'll reimburse you later. So what the employee does then is goes out and buys these gift cards and comes back, and the instructions are like, scratch the back of the card and just email me the numbers or text me the numbers, and then I'll give those out to the employees. But essentially what you're doing is giving away your money by giving the numbers on the back of the cards to someone, because now they can go make purchases online. It's as good as cash. So that's something that, if you're asked to do this, you're going to want to tell your employees, hey, listen, I would probably not ask you to do that, but if you ever get something like that, please call me and confirm. Call me personally and confirm that I've asked you to do this, because more often than not, it's just a scam. Wire transfers are another way that they get their employees to send these money transfers for larger scams. There's all kinds of different things. Head office payroll spoof. It seems to come from an existing employee, this email, and they request a change to the direct deposit information. This tricks the company into depositing the employee's paychecks into a fraudulent account. Basically, you're going to reroute the money to the fraudster. And you would think that this would be easy to catch these people, but they're only using these accounts for a short period of time, and then they'll open them with fraudulent ID. They close them once they take the money out. They're very knowledgeable about how to open and close these accounts. Landlord spoof, spear phishing messages. So here's an example of one. The following is an example of a spear phishing message. Watch out for messages with unusual requests that claim to be from someone you work with. If you're not sure, look up the person's email or phone number in your work directory and verify with them if they sent the message. Anyway, this person asked to get Visa gift cards, $200 face value, etc. So this happened as well not too long ago in Goderich. There was an example similar to that of Collins. I'm just going to go back out of this page. So when you have time, folks, go in here and take a look at the Anti-Fraud Center's site. There's far more information that I could ever talk about in here. They've got so much good stuff in there, and you can look at what's applicable to you. And I'm just going to close out of here. You could look at whatever frauds are of interest to you or that have applied to you and your businesses and your employees. And if you want to do some, Marcy's going to talk a little bit more about training and how to best prepare your employees. But if you want to do some of that yourself, that's a good resource to go in and get some good ideas. She'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about how to do that and protect yourself. So some of the common ones you're going to see are the methods of delivery are going to be email would be the most common one, I think, in your businesses. Also the cell phones, even phone calls that are coming in, orders that are being placed over the phone. Another thing you have to watch for is call spoofing. So what that is that a number will appear on your phone. It could be your cell phone or even your work display. And that number that you see come up is a 519-482 whatever exchange. And you think, oh, that's Clinton. Or 519-235, and you think, well, that's Exeter. You know, that's someone local. So you pick up the phone, and then now you've got a scammer on the line that's actually calling from a different number, but they've hidden it. There's a device they use that hides the true phone number they're calling from, and they show you the fake phone number that they're calling from. Or it's actually a real phone number they're using. They just basically generate these numbers and get you on the line. So they just want a live person to try their scam with. So it's about knowing when you pick up that phone, what are they asking me for? Usually there's a monetary request or a purchase, and there's a sense of urgency. They're going to say, I need this done by noon. And I really need to get this order placed. There's a pressure, there's a time frame, sense of urgency. There's obviously money involved. They want to buy something or send you something, or they're going to make an overpayment and they need it back right away. There's all kinds of different methods they use, but there's money involved and there's time sensitivity involved. These are flags that you need to be aware of and say, you know, no one should be rushing me, and no one should be wanting me to go buy gift cards in such a hurried nature. Like, no one should be doing that. So little flags should be popping up on these phone calls or even on an email. You're like, that's not normal for someone to ask me that. Even if I'm a new employee, my boss shouldn't be asking me to use my own credit card to go buy $5,000 worth of prepaid Visa cards for company gifts for Christmas. That's not a normal thing for someone to ask of me. And we need to educate people that a flag should pop up and go, hold on. Even though they're telling me I need to hurry and do this, I'm going to go do my own checks. I'm going to make sure this is a legitimate email this is coming from. I'm going to try to call my boss and verify this is an actual request that they're asking me to do. And as soon as you do that, you're going to realize this is a fraud, and you've just saved yourself a few $1,000s. So, and again, Marcy will talk about how to better train your employees to look for these types of things. Unfortunately, at our end, we often hear about these frauds after they've been completed. People have lost money, and now they realize they've been victimized in this fraud, and now they've lost money and they want some help. This is when the police find out about it. They'll call us and say, "Ooh, I made a mistake. I sent whatever money to an investment that I thought was legit for cryptocurrency," or, you know, the employee one. There's so many other variables that we get. But usually we find out after the fact. Once the victim's been taken advantage of, that's when we find out. So anyway, we involve the Anti-Fraud Center. We will refer them to if it's a large enough fraud, it goes to our crime unit here, and they'll try to investigate it as best they can. And obviously the goal is to try to catch the offenders. But as I said, sometimes these offenders are not local to Huron County. They're working internationally, and it's very difficult to track it back. So anyway, if this ever happens to you, another tip at your business, please document what you have. If you want to take a screenshot of whatever the information is, if you know if they're trying a scam on you and you've caught it, intercepted it, and you're thinking, I should report this, even if you haven't lost money, please think of reporting it to the Anti-Fraud Center. And it might be a piece of the puzzle that they're looking for, an email or some information that they're looking for to try to solve something. Don't think that it's useless information. Make sure you report it. And they might say, yeah, thank you very much. We're aware of that one. I appreciate you sending that information, but let's all work together anyway and get that information up to the Anti-Fraud Center. So yeah, as it pertains to businesses, we've seen Colin mentioned that example there of a new employee. We had a similar case not too far away here. An employee was asked to go and buy those gift cards. So that's what I've seen before. And in that case, they were able to get $5,000 worth of prepaid Visa cards. And the employee thought they were doing their employer a favor by doing it. And once they were able to confirm with their employer, they said, well, what are you talking about? So the employee felt pretty embarrassed in that case. And it's just a matter of, it was an email that she thought was the employer's email, but it had slight differences in the from line. If you look at from email, you'll look at that email very closely. There'll be some different digits in there. Now, I want to tell you that you're probably wondering, how did they get the email to that employee? Because Colin mentioned that this employee had worked for 48 hours with this organization, and somehow someone messaged that email address and they only had it for 2 days. So when you think about your email types, for example, the OPP, if you knew my name, my email is craig.solden@opp.ca. And that's the same for every OPP officer in the whole province. So if you knew that there was a Constable Caitlin Pretley that works here at Huron, you could email her, as long as you know the proper spelling, caitlin.pretley@opp.ca. It's not that difficult, right? So when we think about our emails that we use for our businesses, when you think about your own series of emails, are they unique or are they pretty generic? Can anyone figure those out? Is it, I'm just going to use a fake name here just for this purpose, but is it janice.brown@huron.ca? Is it colin.carmichael@huroncounty.ca? Because if it is, and I'm not asking you to change the way you do your email listings, but it wouldn't be difficult for someone to figure that out if they were all pretty generic endings and you just needed to know the person's name. Now, I don't know how they found your employees, that staff member's name and their email, but it's just a possibility that someone somewhere for some reason thought they would try that scam and it worked, right? And the answers are, who would know that? Who would do that? Who would know that she's new? And maybe how would they know that she's young? It could be their name, like Ashley is a young name. It's not Betty. And I hate to stereotype, but if I have a crowd of people in that demographic, there's a lot of Bettys and Georges and Bills. And those are older names that are just used in a certain time frame. And then we have younger names, and they can pick up on that. These people aren't stupid. They know that the Ashleys and these newer names that we use, they're younger people. So they might send those people an email that they might not catch it. Even though these younger kids are tech savvy, they don't have a lot of life experience like Colin and I do. Marcy's really young, so she wouldn't know. I'm just kidding. But no, like through life experience, you pick up on, you are educated in this type of thing through experiences, through hearing stories, and you're a little more cautious, a lot more cautious. I can tell you that I'm very cautious. But younger people, a younger employee at 19 or 18 years old or 20 years old, like I can tell you, I've got twin boys that are turning 20 this summer. And and they're both quite different boys, even though they're twins, but they don't know everything. They think they know everything, but they don't. And they could be easily tricked because if you have a people pleaser, someone that wants to help and people please, they want to say yes, 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 yes. It's actually hard to say no. It's hard to say no to anybody. And, as long as the request is reasonable and they think it's from a legitimate source, they're just going to say, yes, yes, for sure, I'll do that. Yes, for sure. So we just have to tell people, hey, let's slow down a little bit here. There's no rush. Let's be cautious. Let's be careful. If they're asking you to do something that's in a rush, or asking you for any kind of monetary, anything, any denominate, like, Visa cards, cash, e-transfers, whatever that is, like, if that combination comes in, we need you to slow down a little bit and just make sure this is from a credible source. I think that's the biggest thing we have to pull away from this. And if you're not sure, let's do our checks and balances and make sure that we're making those phone calls, confirming with the employer, and not just rushing out there to buy the cards to please your boss. It's not their fault. They just don't know. They just haven't been educated about this type of thing. So it's up to us to educate them and prepare them so that they have the proper tools to protect themselves, but also to protect you and your business. I think that's the key. So, I want, like I said, Colin, I usually speak to an older demographic of, seniors about the grandparent scam, the romance scams, those types of things. But today I wanted to kind of keep it limited to the business application, I guess, with frauds and that type of thing. So, and I really wanted to stress the anti-fraud center to people, because I want them to go in there after this webinar is over and, go in there and take a look themselves, because there's so much information and it's so well laid out and easy to navigate, and they can really find out some more information on their own. Does that hit a couple of points that you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, absolutely. And I jotted a few notes down here because, picking up on a couple of things you said, we see, we hear on the news, every couple of weeks, it seems there's some, reported scam of some kind. And, your 2.2 million is an extreme example. And we always, my reaction anyway, always like, how could they fall for that? Like, how do you think that that's going to, whatever. And so, like, going back to that example from last week that prompted this, I was talking to the employee pretty much right after, and she's like, I know this. Like, as soon as it was understood what happened, she and again, like you said, she was embarrassed, because she knows about these, like, she's heard about this before. But in the moment, again, being a people pleaser, wanting to be that helpful new employee and help out their their new boss, that it just in the moment blinded them to what in any other scenario would be an obvious scam, right? And it's what seems obvious isn't always in the moment. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that so the traditional phishing scams, right, where you get these emails and you click a link and it takes you to a thing and they steal your information and then they do nefarious things with it. Like, that's a fairly high tech operation, fairly sophisticated. And some of the spear phishing ones, and just spear phishing is phishing, but where it's very targeted to a person and has lots of personal information to get your trust. Some of those are fairly sophisticated as well, but they don't have to be, right? I mean, it's like this one here, there was no technology involved. There was no hacking involved. It was like, I have an email address and a phone, and they could just do it, literally sitting in a car somewhere. So it wasn't, these aren't necessarily hackers or, high tech criminals. And spoofing an email address is super easy. I mean, spoofing an existing email is easy enough, but just creating one. I mean, I could go out and create constable_solden@gmail.com, or constable_solden72 or whatever, at gmail.com, and send an email to someone pretending to be Constable Solden. And if they don't check closely enough, they might think it was from Craig, right? And
I think, just to interject, if you you have to remember that these scammers, they're not counting on everyone sending the money on every attempt they make, because it's just about numbers. If they send out 100 of these, they might only get 1 or 2 people that fall for it. But those 1 or 2 people that send $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is out of the 100 that they tried, that's still a successful day for them, right? And they might try 100 elderly women for the grandparent scam, and they get 3 that send money, but that 3 that sent money was $40,000 each. So if that one day they got $120,000 in cash sent to them out of the 100 people they tried, again, that's just the numbers. It's a numbers game. And same with these emails too. They may have tried this with a whole bunch of different email recipients, and a lot of them deleted them. They caught it. They realized it was a scam. They didn't even tell anyone. They just deleted it. And I've had those too, where I've had those texts come in or those phone calls, and I just delete them. I don't answer the phone. I've deleted these junk emails. I don't report it to anybody. It's just one that I intercepted, right? And but in your case, where there was a loss, obviously we would want that to be reported to the police and to the anti-fraud center, just to kind of keep track of that and see if we can help out. One thing too, while you were talking there, Colin, sorry to go on here, but one thing I forgot to mention is remote access to computers. And I don't know if anyone has ever experienced that, where you call a legitimate company for computer assistance and they say, well, you've made the phone call and you're talking to someone with Hurontel, let's say, for example, and you've got a computer connectivity issue, and they say, well, let me just take a look at your computer. If you can just click the accept button here, I'll take over your computer and I can go in and see what the download speed is, etc. And they'll diagnose your computer, and that's all good. But in some cases, you're getting an email that has a hyperlink. And if anyone knows what I'm talking about, a hyperlink is just a highlighted email or a website. And if you click on that hyperlink, you're actually going to them. They've taken you to them. And in there, they'll have a button where they'll say, just click here and I'll help you with your Norton antivirus has expired, and I'll help you renew that because your computer is not protected right now. We need to get that done or you're going to expose your computer to viruses. So you're thinking, oh boy, I don't want that. So these people that aren't computer savvy, they click on accept, and next thing you know, they take over your computer. And you see your mouse moving around and there's nothing you can do about it. And they're going into your banking, So I would never allow remote access to your computer unless you have made that tech support call and you know that you're on with a legitimate tech support company. That's just another thing. And if you're clicking on a hyperlink, be careful when you do that, because if you click on a hyperlink that came from illegitimate email, you're now going to them. You're going to be going to an address they've set up, and it's a completely fraudulent site that you're into now. And they've got you, and they know that you're easy to trick. So once they've got you in there, they're going to continue with their fraud. So it's just be careful with the hyperlinks, be careful with the remote access. I just wanted to mention those points while you were talking, Colin. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's even, some of these things that the tactics that they use are not only appear legitimate, but are in some sense legitimate. So you could think of an example where someone creates a throwaway Gmail account, sends an email address and says, hey, I can't get into my work email today for some reason, so this is my personal one, and then goes on with the scam, right? Well, like, that happens, like
if you can think of it, they've already thought of it, right?
Yeah, well, and that's a thing that happens. People can't get locked out of their email and they have to use their personal and whatever. And so, but that's how they get around, the legitimate email address and that kind of thing. And so it just makes, you can't rely on being a really obvious thing, right? These things aren't, they often seem very legitimate and make total sense until they don't, and until you're out $1,000 or $2,000. So,
and you can imagine how many people we're talking about, how many employees, how many emails a day, how many texts a day, how many messages are being sent, and it's really hard to navigate the good ones and the bad ones, especially when you're under stress, you're tired, you're under pressure. We all get busy, and here's another one, and you look at it and go, yeah, whatever, and you don't even do the checks because you don't have time.
Yeah.
So they're going to catch you.
And again, going back to the new employee scenario, where, like, in this case, one of the lessons learned was the boss in this case does not text, does not do text messages, and everyone else in the office was like, yeah, but this person had no idea, no way to know that the boss would never legitimately ask for a text message because he wouldn't know how to get it. But in
Yeah.
that case, right? So
Yep.
and again, so her inexperience as just at that organization, not because she's young, but just because she'd only been with the organization a few days, put her more at risk. So yeah, I think we'll get over to Marcy if Craig, unless you have any final thoughts
No,
or
if anyone had any
anyone.
questions for me about that, I could try to answer them. And if not, that's fine too.
No? All right.
Mark doesn't have anything there. I'm looking at him. Just teasing you. You put your video up, Mark. So that's good. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. And I'd love to stick around.
Sorry, Craig.
Colin, but...
Linda, did you have something?
Oh,
I
okay.
do have one question.
Hi,
What
Linda.
is a contact number if we do have some instance that's fraudulent?
So there's two numbers I'll give you. So the OPP, obviously this probably wouldn't be an emergency, but if it was something where you're on the line with someone and they're threatening you, or it is an emergency situation, dial 911
Yeah.
from another line, or hang up and, whatever you need to do to feel safe. Call us if it's an emergency. But if it's non-emergent, the OPP has a province-wide number that you can use, and it's 1-888
Yeah.
310
Mm-hmm.
1122. And no matter where you are in the province of Ontario, that number will get dialed over to the closest communication center that we have, or call taking center. And the call taker will get your information, and then it'll be dispatched out to an officer that's close to you, and they'll come over and give you a hand if you need an officer to come to the house. Or you can just request a phone call from an officer, and they'll give you a call and help you through whatever you're dealing with. And then if it's not something that we need to have a full report on, let's say you haven't lost any money, but you're just reporting it because you caught it, we would then say to you, okay, thanks for the information. I'm glad you're not victimized here. You're very smart by intercepting this. Can you pass that information along to the anti-fraud center? And then we would give you the email address. You could send your emails up to them, or you could call them yourself. And that's the antifraudcenter.ca. And I'll give you the number for them again. It's 1-888 495 8501. And they have people 24/7 that'll take your information and say, I didn't lose any money, but I want you guys to know about this fraudulent email that I received. And they'll say, hey, can you send that to us? And you'll be like, sure, I'll send it up, and then you do with it what you like. And it might be that piece of the puzzle that they're looking for up there to to catch a certain crime ring that they're investigating. But if we don't pass that information along to them, then what do we have to work with, and how can we solve these crimes, and how do we catch these people? Right? We really need to information share. So that's a good question. And hopefully you never lose any money or anything. But if you ever do, call us and we will support you through that. We never judge, and we don't make people feel embarrassed or silly. Believe us, like we've seen the bigger cases here, and in Huron County alone, we've had 2 cases I know of. There was someone that lost 800,000, and another person lost 500,000, and those were to romance scams. So you can imagine how difficult that would be for them to tell their story. So we have victim services here, a great group of volunteers that we transition them to and support them through that after we leave, and help them with the next steps. Because in some cases, people are wiped out financially completely, and they don't know what to do. And we've actually had people take their own lives, sadly enough. They're so devastated. They don't have any money left. They feel so embarrassed. They don't want to tell their family. And we've had that where people have taken their own lives. So it gets really bad. But I think it's important for us to educate each other, educate ourselves, and share this information with others. I always tell people, like, you were here today, Linda, and you learned a few things, but your brother, your sister, your husband, your kids, your neighbors, they weren't here. And if you can have those conversations sometimes at a dinner table or over coffee or whatever, and just have a light conversation, say, hey, Mom, I learned something today about the grandparent scam. If you ever get a phone call from a police officer and they're telling you that you need to send money because your grandson, Timmy, is in jail, I want you to know that you need to call me and verify that information. And even that one little conversation you have with them, they might go, what's a grandparent scam? You know, they've never heard of it, right? And so that's how we can protect each other, by just having those discussions with people, educating our employees, educating our own families and neighbors. And if we all do this, then we can only control what's around us, I guess, in Huron County. We can do our part to prevent these losses from happening,
Right.
which are in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's actually in the billions every year. So anyway, good question. Thanks for coming today, Linda, to listen in. Appreciate it.
Yeah. That I'll just add that OPP non-emergency number is I'm always amazed at how many people don't know about that number, and that it exists, and that it's the best way really to get in touch with the police, at least the OPP, when it's not a 911 situation, but it's something that so when I had employees in my business, we had that number at the cash register. Because it might not be an emergency, but you might want to call, like, let the, and we had a situation that really that should have happened, and they didn't end up telling me until hours and hours later. And I was like, well, why didn't, you could have called, and, that kind of thing. So, and
another thing, Colin, just to add to, if you can't remember that number, you don't have it anywhere, just go online to www.opp.ca. That one's easy to remember.
Yeah.
Through that website, everything's in there. Actually, links to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, the toll-free number, what to report, what not to report. Everything's on the opp.ca site. You can navigate right through there, and it'll help you out.
Yeah, but just because it's not an emergency that requires 911 doesn't mean that you can't get a hold of the OPP, and they'll let, the call center will let you know whether it's something that requires kind of a more urgent response or not, or a phone call.
They're really good. The call takers are very knowledgeable. They deal with this every day, hundreds of times a day, so they'll navigate you through there for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, we will move on then. Thanks a lot, Craig, for your
thanks for having me. I've just got to head out here for some more things I've got to do, but thanks everybody. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to call us. We'll have an officer. It's not an inconvenience for us. It's what we do for a living. So if you have any problems, questions, anything you're unsure of, just give that non-emergent call a number, or that number a call, and we'll have an officer contact you and help you through it. That's what we're here for. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Okay, Marcy, you've been patiently sitting, listening to Craig and I go on and on about this stuff, but we're really pleased to have Marcy Pritting with us from Ladder HR Solutions, and she's just going to share some of her insights and expertise from the human resources side of things, and this is largely a more on the prevention side, and so I will turn things over to you, Marcy. Maybe just tell us, introduce yourself a little bit, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. I think, it was great. I learned a few things from Craig, and I think, a big takeaway here is definitely that this happens a lot more often than I think people realize, and having these conversations is really, it's just really good, because it brings attention to something that people sometimes might just dismiss. So as you mentioned, I have HR little PowerPoint here, just a couple of slides, and like you said, just kind of going through some prevention ideas. I did want to also just in terms of myself and Ladder HR, so I've been in HR actually for about 15 years. So a number of different industries. I was really lucky. I was able to, find employment after school, and I've kind of been in this industry ever since. So and with Ladder HR, as you mentioned, we have expanded to Huron County. One of our consultants lives in Huron County now, and so we have a team of different consultants across not only Ontario, but in a few other provinces across Canada, and we support businesses with any people challenges or policy challenges, compliance challenges, etc., that they might have. So happy to answer any questions after this too. But essentially, my goals for today, like the objective is to really, share with employees and employers some techniques to stop scams, scams that we've heard from some of our clients, and scams that we've heard, you know, from Craig today too. And how we can do this is through organizational policies, onboarding, ongoing training, tools, resources, best practices, and then some case studies we'll talk about as well at the end, and what we did about it. So nothing like a good policy. This is kind of where it all begins. A lot of companies now are starting to have IT security policies, email response policies. In some cases, they even outline different members of the group. Maybe the payroll or the finance team has specific requirements just because they have access to the banks and they have access to different you know, like signing authority types of websites and logins. So separating and differentiating different requirements based on what people have access to. If somebody has a cell phone, like a work issued cell phone, or they're using their personal phone for work purposes, creating policies around what does that look like if your personal phone gets compromised, but you have your email attached to it, or you have a payroll login attached to your phone in case, you know, you do participate in a phishing scheme. So kind of it's kind of just getting organized, who has access to what in terms of security risks and who's responsible for what, you know, in regards to that. Spelling that out and then letting people know, you know, who's here to support them, what kind of ongoing prevention can we do, you know, what to do if we think we are a victim or we're receiving these phishing emails or phishing texts, and then how to report it and things like that. So they are becoming quite common, and like I said, it really just starts with how many layers you have in your organization, and adding some of those different responsibilities to those layers. Because like I said, especially in smaller organizations, the payroll person, you know, will have bank authority, may have signing authority to different things, and they could have a lot of this on their desktop or in their cell phone. So it's important that they might get some extra training or have some extra procedure that they need to follow in case something happens. And then with any good policy, it's good to train it out. Always important to have policies trained during orientation. As Colin shared, you know, in the example that he gave, this person was a summer student, you know, they just started their job. It might be their first time using Outlook. I've had a client as well who just hired a new grad out of Western, and similar situation, you know, the CEO said, hey, I'm in a meeting, please send me some gift cards. And this person did purchase gift cards and made an innocuous comment to their manager. And their manager was like, what, you know, Greg would never do that. You know, what's going on here? And obviously just really embarrassed. So we've now created for that client just an addendum that goes with their onboarding paperwork, you know, like tax forms, policy manual, etc. We have a spot the phishing scam. We've screenshotted a bunch of different types of examples, and we've also shared like contact information. These are, you know, this is the org structure. These are the leaders of the company, so they know the name, and here's their cell phone, just in case you need to get a hold of them, because, you know, they might not have met the CEO before, and they're just getting this email because it was just newly created. So giving them the tools, and you can kind of wrap it in to, you know, onboarding really easily in terms of just sharing, you know, your org structure, things like that. Some companies also do simulated phishing tests. Some companies also don't have IT departments within them, but you can hire reputable third-party MSP companies, which we've worked with before, where they can do like an audit, or they can do ongoing tests just to make sure that your servers and that your employees don't fall for some of the new trends that are going on. Yeah, and then again, just kind of sharing what to do in case they get an email, or they, they end up clicking the links or things like that. So other pieces, you can purchase softwares that will, filter your emails and have anti-phishing components to those softwares. They'll typically flag it. Hey, this email is outside of your organization, usually in like bright yellow or orange, and it'll get you to check where the email's coming from, check some of the links, things like that before you respond right away. Having multi-factor authentication. So this is something that's particularly popular for people who are using company cell phones or personal phones and having company information or logins on their personal phone, making sure it's that multi-factor authentication, different passwords. As annoying as that is, it's just really important, because if somebody is able to, get in through your cell phone, and we have had an example of this, clone what's on your cell phone and those passwords, it can be risky. Domain monitoring and spoofing protection. So this is more in line with an IT professional. Endpoint protection, regular patching, and then frequent password change requirements. So again, creating that policy, you can say maybe every 6 months we're changing our password, or every quarter we're changing a password, or in some cases, again, you can outsource that depending on the needs of your company, and you can outsource that to an MSP provider. Reviews and updates. So just like health and safety, things are changing. I learned a lot today from Craig, just in terms of some of those scams that are going on. So it's always great just to share new trends, share new updates, reviewing things, particularly if you do have a security breach or one of your employees, does click a phishing email, or even if, we have one client that says any type of phishing email you get, we want you to screenshot it and send it to the IT manager, because they're tracking like the cadence of how often this is happening. Is it always at the beginning of the month? Is it always at the end? And then they're adjusting the security based on those types of trends. And then having a business contingency plan in place, like what's going to happen if your CEO's cell phone is compromised? What's going to happen? Do you have backups for people that can authenticate critical softwares that you need if you do have to shut things down because there was a security breach due to a phishing scam? So just, again, kind of organizing who has access to what, who has responsibility to what, and then what would happen if their computer was compromised or their cell phone was compromised due to an email scam, or in some regard, like that one new hire who did buy some gift cards. Her boss was like, well, are we financially responsible to reimburse her for this fraud? And technically no, it's a fraud. But some people may want to offer something like that. Again, it was just very embarrassing, and this person just felt terrible about it. So just putting things in place, and again, sharing this, especially with incoming employees, can go a long way, so that they have expectations of what kind of support they could get if they do make a mistake. This is a little bit blurry, but it's highlighted. Is the sender actually from the company? Is there a sense of urgency? Sometimes they'll have that little flag that it's a high priority email. And we have a ton like I said, we have that onboarding addendum that we share where it has a ton of screenshots of sample phishing examples that we've seen, and we're happy to share those. You know, vague or urgent type of email. Hey, text me here. Hey, I'm in a meeting. I can't talk. Please just do this. Sometimes it'll typically say sent from iPhone or sent from cell phone. So you get the impression that the senior leader you're talking to isn't in the building, that they're maybe offsite or at a meeting, and that can make you feel like there's less people to talk to about that. Hovering over links to see what the actual URL is, you know, they could label it, you know, PayPal or RBC Bank, and then when you put your mouse over it, it could say Western Union, ... It could say, you know, some kind of bogus website. So even though it looks like a hyperlink, like RBC Bank or CRA or those types of links you would typically see in a formal professional email, when you scan over it, the URL is actually going to somewhere else. And once you click it, that's when the computer mirroring and things like that can happen. Some case studies. So again, like email looks legit. You'll oftentimes see like the naming. I used myself here as an example, like the naming, and maybe it's .ladder.ca at something weird.ca. So you're quick checking it and you're like, oh, I'm printing. Yep, that's right. Oh, ladder. Yep, that's right. But you've maybe missed that the at is at, you know, something different. Checking embedded links. Like I said, we have had examples where somebody, you know, thought it was something legitimate from the CRA. It said, click here to check your CRA account portal. They clicked it. It ended up being something, it ended up taking them to a totally different website, and they didn't realize it until it was too late, and it was difficult for them to exit out of it once they had clicked that link. But thankfully they were able to text their IT person who was able to try and stop things on the other side. But it, you know, again, it's tricky. We've also had an employee who used their personal phone but had, you know, their company email and Microsoft Teams on their phone. They had their payroll login apps on their phone, and they got a text, and it was it gave the impression from their daughter, hey mom, my phone died, I'm with, you know, talk to me through this number. And, you know, the mom, like the employee clicked it thinking she's talking to her daughter. And then it was through that process that basically the person was able to then mirror the person's cell phone. And so she thought, again, she was just answering a text to her daughter because her phone had died, and, you know, things like that. So instead of just stopping, maybe trying to call the daughter just to verify if her phone was actually compromised or dead, or try to get information there. As Craig mentioned, our best recommendation is when in doubt, call the sender, just because it's just the easiest way just to confirm, hey, did you send this email? Hey, I just got a text from you. Are you out with a friend right now? Did you picked up, so your phone's not dead, so there's no reason for me to text this number that you sent. And again, just in that policy, kind of outlining who's responsible for what, because there might be different reporting mechanisms that you want to use based on certain responsibilities that people have in the organization. Other scams too. This is something that just came up with one of my clients, and I just wanted to share, even though it's not necessarily phishing related. But one of my clients has been in contact with like an Ontario Ontario immigrant newcomer program. And an investigator reached out to them because they had a couple of offer letters that didn't make sense to them. And so they were calling to investigate to see if these employees were hired there. and B, if these were real offers of employment. To which then we learned that somebody was creating fraudulent offer letters on company letterhead and using information that they got from LinkedIn or the company website. So they were using a senior member of the organization who doesn't usually sign offer letters. We're actually the HR there, we manage their contracts. So that was able to help us, but it looks like basically there was a fraudulent immigration agency set up overseas, and that they were taking our branding and taking the information from this employee and creating fraudulent offer letters for positions that A, didn't exist in our company, and B, with employees that we had never hired. So what we've learned in this process is, again, report this to police, just like what Craig had shared, because in this case, that senior leader was a victim of fraud, like they had used their identity, and the company also didn't want to be on the hook for any type of fraudulent offer letters in regards to the IRCC or the OINP program. Ensuring you have a consistent template for offers of employment is what really helped us. We were able to show the investigator, this is what our typical offer letters look like. We blacked out, personal information of some of those sample offer letters, but we were able to share, this is what a graphic designer offer letter looks like, and just kind of took out that information. And then the investigator was able to see, okay, there's clauses that aren't the same here. There's the style isn't the same. There's a number of discrepancies. So this organization wasn't a part of this scam. Also sending offers of employment through secure channels. So previously we were sending offers of employment through email without any kind of password protection on the offer letters. We've now changed our processes just to ensure that in case somebody hacks an email, whether it's a prospective employee or one of our current employees, by encrypting the offer letter, it at least helps protect some of that corporate responsibility that we have, so that it's not duplicated and being misused by other people that aren't affiliated with the company. And that was a new one. So how Ladder can help, like I said, we have created policies. We also have standard offer of employment templates. We have access to reputable service providers or software options that we've used to add security for, employee information or processes. And then of course, like employee training and management support too. Like I said, we've created documentation that goes with different onboardings, policy development. Every organization is different, and whether it's through size or whether it's through use of data or use of technology, and it's just important to, again, really identify who needs to know what, give everybody access to contact information, and make sure everybody knows what to do when and if they click a link that they weren't supposed to click, basically. Yeah, but that's it for me. I didn't know, Linda, if we lost Mark here. I didn't know if you had any questions for me at all.
Can you explain that again with the immigration?
Yeah,
I
it
only
was
ask
really,
because we have immigrants working here too, so I just want to be aware, so our HR department sort of is aware.
yeah, it was honestly, it was a really strange situation. It was a new one for me and the team at Ladder. And they also have employees that are immigrants in the organization too, who were offered a job legally, like they applied and they were vetted and they were offered legitimate offers of employment. What happened here and what we learned, essentially, we didn't know that this had happened until the investigator had, in one case, an investigator reached out to us.
Right.
And in another case, one of these employees who benefited, for lack of a better word, from a fraudulent offer letter called the senior leader and said, hey, you wrote me this offer letter. Can you write me a verification letter? Because I want to extend my work permit. And then that's when the senior leader was like, you're not an employee, and had the the wits at the time to even like record the conversation and try to get some information from this person who had a fraudulent offer letter. But basically what we found out through the investigators is that and there's a flag on our account now as well. But basically what we found out through these investigators is that there was an organization. They couldn't say like where it was based out of, but based on the people that were taking advantage of it, we believe it was China. And they had scooped our branding off our website, and they had scooped like the VP's contact information, name, job title, etc. And then they had created a document that basically, and the investigators didn't show us the document, but we were able to provide to them proof that, of our innocence, that, we're not creating bogus offer letters. But basically they had created their own offer letter for a couple, and this was a technical organization, so it was a couple of IT roles, but then there were also some positions of like laborer, or I think another one was like a carpenter or something like that. So that role didn't make sense for that organization because that's not the business they're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was new to us, and so we obviously shared that with the investigators, and I also shared with them just the names of the employees that that are on work permits right now, and said, these are the ones that are legitimate. Please let us know if you have any that are not legitimate on your list. They weren't able to confirm how many they had on their list. There's some, they couldn't share some of those details of their investigation, but I didn't want this to affect the people that were here legitimately, because I had just sent in verification letters for them. And but it was something that definitely surprised us. And we don't know why this person was targeted or how, but
or why that business even was targeted.
Yeah, we don't know.
The other variation of that I'm aware of is where they do that same scooping of branding and and sending out fake offer letters, and then basically extort the potential immigrant for the verification letter. So they say,
right,
in order for us, in order to get your verification letter, you have to send us like $1,000 or whatever, and they're just and they never get what they think they're getting, and so they're exploiting the potential newcomer, which is kind of almost the opposite of what you were describing, Marcy, where this was folks trying to get legitimate verification letters illegitimately.
Yeah, well, we didn't want there to be any kind of conflict. I didn't want the government to think that we were involved in this scam, because, and I know immigration has changed a lot in the last year. Like there's been a lot of differences, but especially during like the COVID frenzy, we just, and there are, like, the investigator had shared that there are legitimate businesses, like a Tim Hortons was just like, hey, pay me $10,000 and I'll give you a manager job offer letter kind of a thing. And I didn't want this company to be affiliated with that, and the person, that senior leader, their name was on all of these letters, and
Right.
so we also wanted to make sure that they were, you know, that we tried to clear it as quickly as possible. We filed the police report, we documented. They did put a flag on our account, so if they see things, they will. We're anticipating having more conversations with them, but at least we're kind of in like the good books of it, we believe, versus finding out, you know, a year from now that this company gets a fine, or they're being held responsible for bringing in so many people that we didn't actually bring in. They're not on our payroll or anything.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so we're coming up on time. So
Yeah.
I had a couple thoughts from what you were saying, Marcy, to share, and one of them is making sure that new employees in particular have um, contact info, particularly that like after hours contact info for someone senior to them, you know, their manager or their, you know, so that if they get, you know, that urgent email or text message at 8 p.m. they can verify whether it's legit or not, because if all they have is the email address that's being spoofed, they have no way to verify, you know, that through another channel. And so, I mean, you want to be careful about privacy, and you know, you don't want to be just handing out personal contact information to employees willy-nilly either. But it's important to give those employees another option in terms of how to get a hold of their manager to verify these things, and because they do so often feel very legitimate. And you mentioned this part, Marcy, but I want to reiterate it again, that anything that even has the slightest hint of a red flag, change the method of communication and start fresh, right? So if it's an email that you get and you're like, pick up the phone and call the person. If it's a text message you get and you're like, start a fresh email to them, you know, from your you know, trusted contact, and send an email to them saying, did you just like send me a text message, because, you know, whatever. So changing the method of communication then, you know, gets you outside of whatever they're trying to spoof, and those kind of things. But the phone call is always the best, because if you can hear the voice, you know, like these at least in these types of scams, they're not likely to be. There's all kinds of scams that happen over the phone, obviously. These ones tend not to be, so you know, they tend to rely on the spoofed phone number, you know, text messages or emails, that kind of thing. The other piece that I just want to mention is and actually, Marcy, you did touch on it a little bit, is insurance. And you know, you talked about whether the company was liable to reimburse the employee that was a victim of this fraud, and it really depends on what your corporate insurance protects you for. So in the case that I was talking about last week, the employer was able to so they did reimburse the employee. They were going to do that anyway, but their insurance did cover that loss, and so they were able to make a claim on that loss. But they had, you know, anti-cyber fraud insurance, whatever it was, something on there. So so I'm not an insurance person, and I know there's lots of legalities around that, but so the best advice that I can give everybody is have a chat with your insurance provider about what your coverage is, or what it should be, and what, you know, what from an insurance perspective, what's appropriate for coverage against these types of scams, at least just so you know what your coverage is, and then, but also to assess whether something more is appropriate, particularly if there are changes in, you know, the number of employees that you have, or the types of employees that you have, or if, you know, you now have employees that get email addresses that you never had that before because you only had people, you know. Anyway, those kinds of changes, you know, to talk to your insurance provider and ensure that you understand your coverage and what you're liable for and not liable for. And so I think that's that's all I have. I will though take the opportunity to plug a something new that's coming up soon, that in partnership with Ladder HR. So the Huron Chamber of Commerce will be launching a HR peer network. And so we know that many of our members and other businesses in Huron County aren't big businesses, and human resources is often done off the corner of someone's desk, whose primary job is something else. And sometimes it's the owner doing it at 11. Linda's laughing, yeah. From experience, right? Yeah. So, you know, and it's sometimes it's the office administrator who has no training and no, you know, is doing the best they can. And sometimes it's the owner who's doing it at 10 o'clock at night because that's the only time that they have to do it, those kinds of things. And so through our partnership with Ladder HR, we're setting up a peer network for not for HR professionals, but for people who do HR, and that's a much broader group, and so that we can all help each other and learn from each other in terms of how to, you know, best practices for human resources, and Ladder is generously sponsoring that group, and will be kind of leading it in a sense, but in terms of providing some guidance there. But yeah, so we're excited for that to launch soon. We have to just kind of get some details worked out, and hasn't been officially launched. So this is kind of the unofficial announcement of this new thing. So anyone who stuck around right to the end of this webinar, you got some news that no one else has. So thanks, Linda, and anyone watching the recording that got this far. Maybe we've launched by now, who knows? But we're looking forward to that, because these issues, you know, especially when HR isn't your full-time job, it's very difficult to keep up with all the latest you know, issues or things you need to be thinking about, and I know that, you know, the folks I know that where HR is 15% of their time, like, they do the best they can, but it's, you know, it's just really tough to squeeze things in, anyway, so I'll leave that there. I'll thank Marcy again for her insights today, and thanks, Linda, for joining us. And we didn't have many live guests today, but it was a very short turnaround on this webinar. But I felt it was really important to get this information out as quickly as possible, given the number of employees being onboarded kind of last week, this week, next week, as the summer students come in and other things. And so I didn't want to wait any longer than necessary. And Craig and Marcy, when I called them last week, they were ready to go right away. No hesitation at all. And so we were really glad to be able to put this together. And as I said, the recording will be available on the Chamber's website, YouTube, all the places, and folks will be able to find it. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.